Alright, part 228 scope, subpart A, general. This prescribes the reporting of the record, keep the requirement of the hour of the certain railroad employee with the certain employees, railroad contractor, subcontractor, example, the name of the proceed if it is concerned with the construction, the reconstruction, sleeping quarters, establishment, minimum safety, health, name of the camp car, to provide with the railroad sleeping quarters, if it is employed, for the individuals employed to maintain the right of way, prescribes substantive hour of the service, the requirement of the train employment engaged for the commuter intercity railroad transportation, 2/3, 28.3. Application for the responsibility for compliance. Except for the provided paragraph B of the section subpart B and D with this part of all the railroads the L contract of the railroads and all subcontract of the railroads except for the provided paragraph B of the section subpart C and the E with the part of the ARP only to all the railroads subpart B and E with the part do not apply. All railroad contract of the railroad, subcontract of the railroad that operate for the track and side of the installation. This is not part of the general railroad system of the transportation. Plant railroads defined in statute 228.5 with the tourist, scenic, historic, excursion operations that are not part of the general railroad system of the transportation is defined in statute 228.5 except as provided in 228.413 D2. Rapid transit operation in an urban area that are not connected with the general railroad system of the transportation. The application subpart F is the part that's set forth in 228.401. 228.5 the definitions as used as part of the actual time, either the specific time of the day, of the hour, the minute, with the precise amount of the time spent, the activity hours, minute, must be included with the hours of the day, and the recording of what is appropriate, the reference to applicable time zones, either standard for the daylight times, save of the time. Administer the meeting, but the administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration, any person who the administrator delegates the authority of the matter concerned administrative of the duties means that any of the activities required with the railroad, the condition, employment that related with the reporting, the receipt of the provided with the oral written statement related to the current, previous, and future, with the duty of the tour with such activities considered substantive of the railroad. Time spent with these activities must include with the time of the total time of on the duty for any of the duty tour with which may be the commingling. The associate administrator means the associate administrator of the railroad safety chief of the safety officer, office of the railroad safety federal railroad administration, or any person to whom or he or she is delegated in authority to matter of the concern. At behest of the employee, refers to the time spent in the employee railroad related activity that does not require the railroad condition of employment in which the employee is voluntary participate. At the behest of the railroad, refers to the time spent with the employee with the railroad required activity compelled for the employee to perform the service of the railroad on condition of employment. Broken, aggregated services, that means the one with the more period of the time of the duty with a single duty with the tour that separated with one more than the qualifying interim releases. Call and release occur for the emergency employment of the railroad issue with the employee with the report of the duty time of the result release for the employee with the requirements of the report prior to the report of the duty time. Camp car with the meeting for the time travel with the on track with the vehicle, including the outfit with the camp of the bunker car with the modular home with the mount of it on the flat car, any other mobile vehicle, mobile structure used to house accommodated employee with the maintenance of the work with lawyers and the office of the inspection for the car, specialized maintenance, and the equipment of the record trim that include the common carrier that engage with the interstate with the foreign commercial of the railroad, means the railroad commingle with the service means the one for the training of the single employee within the covered service behalf of the railroad with the perform of the railroad that is not separated with the covered services with the qualifying territory and of duty with the 8 or more hour 10 hour of the commingle with the service contained with the time day and time of the due pursuant to Title 49 Standard Code 21 103 B3 for the train with employees, Title 49 Standard Code 211 04 B2 for the single employee with the dispatching and services employee with the non-covered and services mandated by the railroad performed with the railroad within 24-hour period. Continue the uncovered for the commingling with the services and count down time on the duty pursuant to Title 49 Standard Code 21105 C. Commuting means for the train employee with the time of the suspension of the travel between the employee resident for the employee at the regular reporting point and the railroad provided with the authorized transportation to and from the lodging of the facility with away from the home of the terminal, excluding the travel and purpose of the intermittent travel with which time includes travel delays in the room and availability to not exceed 30 minutes for every single employee with the time of the travel between the employee's residence for the employee headquarters for the dispatching service for the employee time spent with the travel between the employee resident for the aim for the reporting point with the consecutive services period of unbroken total time on the duty of the during the duty toward the covered services means for the four train employee with the portion of the employee time of the duty time on the duty employee is engaged in the connected with the movement of the train that the dispatching service employee with the portion of the employee's time on the duty which of the employee with the use of the electrical mechanical devices dispatch report for the transmit receive delivers and other related effect of the movements of the train for the signal for the employee with the portion of the employee time on the day with the duties for the employees to engage with the installing of the repairing of the maintaining of the signal system coverage of services and assignment for the train employee in each unique assessment of the employee during the period of the covered services for the association either the specific training or the specific yard job. For the single employee that has assigned the duty for the hours including the overtime overtime, the unique trouble the calling assignment occurs the outside of the employment assigned duty of the dispatching service employee, such as the unique assignment of the employee that occurs with each of the 24 hours period that each employee with the use of the electronic mechanical device dispatch report with the transmit, receive the delivers over the related to the affecting train movements. Deadheading means the physical relocation of the train employed with the one employee but the result of the railroad issued verbal written directive. The designated terminal means the home with away from the home of the terminal from the assignment of the particular train crew. Dispatching service employee needs for the operator of the train dispatcher or the train employee who may be by use of the electrical mechanical device and dispatch report, transmits, receive, the delivers all the related to affecting train movement. The duty location, single employee with the employee headquarters, the precise location where the employee is expected to begin performing services of the railroad is defined in Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 21104B1 and 2. The duty tour means the total all periods for the cover then service commingle with the service of the train employee with the single employee with the occurring between the two statutory of the two duty periods off the duty periods of a minimum of 8 to 10 hours. The total all periods of the cover then service commingled services for a dispatching service employee occur with any of the 24 hours of the period and employee of the individual employed with the railroad, the contractor, subcontractor of the railroad. One is actually engaged with and connected with the movement of any of the train, including a person with the form of the duty and a host or hollister. 2. Dispatch reports the train when it is received the delivery in orders pertaining to the train movement of the use of the telegraphic, telephone, radio, and any other electrical mechanical devices. Engaged in system repairing the maintaining signal system final release at the time of the train with the employee signal employee with the release with all the activity BS of the railroad behind begins for the of his or her statutory off duty period. For the FRA means for the Federal Administration headquarters means for the regular series assigned to on duty location single employees lodging facility crew members quartered with the traveling single gave the reside with the working with the various system locations. Intermittent release main means of the off-duty period applied with the train employees only over the last at least 4 hours less than required stationary statutory off-duty with the designated terminal with the off-duty period with the temporary suspend the accumulation with the time of the duty does not start with the new tour due duty of the tour. Limbo time means the period of the time treated with neither the time of the duty the time off duty. In Title 49 Standard Code 21103, 21104, and any other period of the service of the railroad that does not qualify either of the covered service or the commingling of service, maintenance for the work, or maintenance for the way worker means for the individual employee to inspect, install, construct, repair, maintain track, roadbed, bridge, buildings, roadway facilities, roadway maintenance of machines and electrical traction systems, the rear way of the right of way of the railroad. On the duty times machine that means the actual time of the employee reports the duty beginning with the covered services assignment. Other than regular reporting point, but the means for the location where the train employee reports to begin with the restart of the restart of tour duty restart duty of tour that does not. This is not an employee's regular reporting point. Or your plant railroad means a plant installation one one owns or leases locomotive the use of locomotive which carried throughout the plant with the installation and the moving the goods slowly for the use of the facility or industry process of the plant. And the installation could include the track immediately adjacent to the plant with the installation if the plant releases railroad lease for the track for the general system railroad. The lease of the provided for the actual practice entails exclusive of the use of the trackage by the plant railroad general system railroad for the purpose of the moving only the cars shipped up to and from the plant with the plant installation for the operator for the locomotive switch for the move of the cars other end even solely within the confines of the plant installation rather than its own purpose of the industrial process will not be considered for the plant with the required with the performance of such activity make for the operation for the general railroad's transportation of the system. Prior to the time off being for the amount of the time of the employee has been off duty between identifiable periods of service at the behest of the railroad program, as all filters contained with the logical all here hours of service records keeping the program detachable identifying and the reporting efforts were made with the reportable employees at the time of the day of the entry, the preventing of the employee for the submitting of the record within the first correction of the example explaining with the identified area of the anomalies. Quick tie-up is the data entry of the process when an employee is within 3 minutes or is beyond his or her statutory maximum amount of duty which permits process allows the employee to enter the only basic information necessary of the railroad to identify the beginning of the employee's statutory off-duty period to avoid the excessive service that would otherwise incurred with the completion of the full record of the duty of tour. For the information performed, the quick type of the process is limited to the maximum. Board placement time, the review, relief location, date and time, the final release location, date and time. Contact information for the employee during the statutory off-duty. The request for the rest of the addition for the statutory minimum to provide for the collective bargaining agreement or local practice. To employ may be provided with the option to enter of the basic information related to only the duty of the tour tied up. The employee certification for the tie up of the information provided with the railroad means the person provided with the railroad transportation. Railroad transportation means any form of non-highway ground transportation that runs on the rail's electromagnetic guidelines and the company with the other short haul of the railroad passenger within the metropolitan suburban areas, high-speed ground transportation system that connect with the metropolitan areas with regard to the weather, the use of the new technologies associated with the traditional railroads. Such term does not include the rapid transit operation with the urban areas that are not connected with the general railroad transportation system, railroad system of transportation. Regular reporting points made by the permanent with the on-duty location trained employee with the regular assignment that is established throughout the job bulletin assignment of either job of the workforce assignment through employees exercise with the seniority to be placed in the assignment. The assigned regular with the reporting of the single phase location identified with the railroad system, even the extra board pool crew members and released as the meaning for the trained employee with the time within the duty of the tour of the employees begin with the intermittent relief of the time of the employee with the complete with the coverage services assignment that begins for the other coverage services assignment with a different trained job. This is the time of the employee with the complete with the code of the coverage services assignment to begin with the another activity account for the time of the duty, including with the waiting with the dead-hand transportation to another duty location within the employee while the performing coverage services heading to the duty and the other commingled service. For the single employee with the time within the duty of the tour, the employee completes his or her regular assigned hours, begins on the off-duty period with at least 1 hour, but less than statutory off-duty period. With the complete for his or her return of the travel to call other unscheduled duty, begins from the off-duty period with at least 1 hour, but less than statutory off-duty. For the dispatching service, the employee with he or she stops the performing control service, the commingling service within another 24-hour period that begins with the off-duty period at least 1 hour. The relief at this time means the actual time of the trained employee stops performing the coverage service assignment of the commingled service. The actual time the single employee with the completion of his or her assigned duty comes stop the performance coverage service of the commingled service, which if it is later the stop the performing the coverage service associated with the trouble caller or on a scheduled duty outside of the normal assigned duty. The reports of the duty means for the employee with the representative himself with his or so the location established of the railroad at the time of the railroad established for the employee to represent with the ready to perform in coverage service. The report for the duty for the duty time of the trained employee with the actual time of the employee that is required to represent with the reporting point with the prepare for the start with the coverage service the assignment for the single employee with the assignment with the starting of the employee with the scheduled safety shift at the time when he is receiving the trouble to call any other unscheduled duty during the off period with the dispatch service employee when the employee begins with the turn over the process of the before the beginning with his or her assigned sheet with the shift that begins with the activity of the behalf of the railroad during the 24 of the period of the coverage service of the perform. Reporting point means if any of the location where the employee is required to begin with the restart with the duty tour. Seniority of the means of the repositioning the behest of the employee, usually repositioning the regular assignment of the extra board with a different regularly assigned portion of the extra board. As a result, employee section of the bulletin assignment of the employee exercises of seniority over the junior employee. The single employee means the individual is engaged in installing, repairing, the maintained signal system station off of the tower means precise location where the dispatching service of the employee is expected to perform the service of the railroads as defined in Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 21105. B and C, the statutory off-duty period means for the period of 8 and 10 for the consecutive hours of the time of the minimum of the off-duty for the period required under the hour of the service law of the trained employee or single employee to begin with the number new 24-hour period and the purpose of calculating his or her time duty. Total off-duty means for the actual amount of the time of the trained employee with a single employee with the off-duty between the duty of the tour from the previous final release and before the beginning of the next day. With the time may differ from the expected prior time off of the and they will be generated with the recording system for the infinite employee with the performance service with the ES for the railroad between the duty of tours. Or your total time of the duty. TTOD means the total accumulation time spent with the period of the coverage service commingled with the service between the qualifying statutory off-duty period of the 8 to 10 hours or more. Mandatory activities does not constitute with the coverage service such as the rules class that may not attest for the coverage service account of the limbo time rather than commingled service which the limbo time is not counted toward the calculation of the total time of the duty. Towards scenic historic excursion operation they're not part of the general railroad system. The transportation means the towards scenic historic excursion operated with the conducted but only with the track used exclusively for the purpose of there was no freight with the air city passenger, commuter passenger railroad operation train employee. The means of the individual engaged with the connected with the movement of the train include the holster. Alright, travel time. The first single employee with the time of spent with the transportation between the employee's headquarters and the outlying duty point with between the employee's residence and the outlying duty point with between the duty lines, including both on track and the highway. Vehicular time. For the dispatching service for the employee, the time spent with the travel between the station officers and towers during the employee time due to the type 1 assignment, the means for the meant to work with a trained employee with the assignment with the commuter and interstate railway transportation emergency that require the employee to report the duty earlier than 4 a.m. of the calendar day, with the release for the duty no more later than 8 p.m. of the same calendar day, with the comply with the provisions of statute 28405 for the purpose of this part of the FRA. Consider the type 1 assignment with the present with the accountability, acceptability of the list of the level of risk of the fatigue that does not validate with the defines fatigue with the threshold of the scientifically valid in biomethod mathematical mode of the model of human performance. And fatigue with approved by the FRA with the statute 28407C. Approved with the FRA under the procedure 228-407C2, but however the day of the type 1 assignment is delayed with the schedule actually worked, include the period of the time between the midnight and 4 a.m. The conservative type 2 assignment for the purpose of compliant with the statute 228-405. Type 2 assignment, the type 2 assignment that means for the assignment to be worked on the train employees will be engaged for the commuter intercity railway passenger train services, requires the employee to be on duty for the period of the time between 8:01 to the calendar day with the 3.5 and 3:59 in the morning. The next calendar day otherwise failed to qualify the type 1 assessment. The type 2 assessment is considered the type 1 assessment if it does not violate the defined facility with the threshold of the scientifically valid biomethod model of the human performance fatigue specified in the FRA statute 228-407C2 that is approved under the procedure of the 228-407C1. It complies with the provision of 228-405 and 3. It does not require the employee to be on duty with any period between midnight and 4 a.m. If it's a type 2 assignment that would be normally qualified with the tree, with the type 1 assignment that is delayed so that the schedule actually worked includes any period of the time between midnight and 4 a.m. The assignment is considered a type 2 assignment for the purpose of the compliance with the statute 228-405. 228.6 penalty. Simple penalty. Any person with any type of the covenants under 1 U.S. Code is included but not limited to the following: the railroad patent manager, passenger, supervisor, official, other employee, agent of the railroad, any owner of the manufacturer, leaser, or lessor of the railroad, equipment track facility, the independent contractor provided with the goods and services of the railroad, any employer, such as the owner of the manufacturer, leaser, or lessor, independent contractor who violates the requirements of this part of the cause of the violation, each of the requirements subject to the civil penalty at least $650 more than $25,000 violation. Shall the penalty be assessed for the individuals only willfully violation for the grossly negligent violation, pattern repeated violation is agreed at imminent head for the death injury person for the cause of the death and the injury penalty to exceed $105,000 violation may be assessed each day of the violation continues shall constitute a separate offense with the C. The penalty be for this part with the same agency civil penalty violation for the hours of service themselves, requiring an employee to work in excess of hour at the beginning with the construction of the sleeping quarters subject to the approval of the under subpart C for this part without prior approval that are subject to the penalty of Title 20 and 49 U.S. Code 21303. Criminal penalties. Any person knowingly, willfully falsifies reports record with the kept under this part, but otherwise knowingly, willfully violates requirement for this part of the liable criminal penalties fine under the Title 18 of the U.S. Standard Code, imprisonment up to 2 years of both in accordance with the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 21311A. Subpart B, records and reporting.